Today, President Trump's explosive coronavirus press briefing yesterday. Also, House Democrats won't reopen Congress until May 4th, absent an emergency. An emergency, not anything that's going on right now. Also, Joe Biden finally gets the endorsement he's not been waiting for. He swears he has not been waiting for it. We have got all that and much more coming up, and it starts right now. Welcome to the news and why it matters. I am Sara Gonzales, today joined in studio by Stu Burgier, host of Stu Does America. That's twice in a row, I'll have you know. That is like way more than you've done in the past 2 months. So what do we owe the pleasure?
Very expendable. They're hoping I catch something.
That is to what we owe the pleasure, obviously. Also, we are joined remotely by Steve Deace, host of the Steve Deace Show, which is also on BlazeTV. Steve, you are not a newbie to the show, but this is your first time via remote over at your set. So it's good to have you back.
Indeed, we're taking social distancing to an extreme vantage point here. Yes, I'm like 600,000 feet away.
I mean, you never can be too careful, right? You never can be too careful. We got a lot to get into.
And the new CDC guidelines say that these things can now travel 600,000 feet. So make sure to sanitize the screen after we're done.
The sad part is that's like probably not the onion piece, right? Like that could be true. I'm not sure. So let's talk about the President Trump press briefing from yesterday. I'm really tired of talking all the doom and gloom, and I want to get into something fun. So President Trump, first of all, how long was it? It was over 2 hours.
I heard it was over 2 hours. I did not hang out it was the Lord of the Rings of press conferences.
Which is the problem with these daily press briefings, is they get to be a little cumbersome for people to watch. Steve, did you watch it by chance?
I don't watch any of them. I do follow them every day on social media, though. Yeah. The various egos and personas are so grating to me that it clouds my judgment, so I have to watch from afar.
Well, and I can't, I mean, it's like, you're stuck at home, but with us, with families, you're stuck at home, but you're certainly not doing nothing, especially at that time. It's like, you got to get dinner ready. You got to take care of the kids. I don't have two hours to sit down and watch a press briefing, but it got pretty explosive, pretty heated. President Trump, he's in the wake of being attacked every single day by the mainstream media, asking him the same stupid questions. And I get it, but really the questions are ridiculous. It's the same gotcha questions that they try to make him look like he hasn't done enough. So he decided to walk out on stage and tell everyone he was going to dim the lights and show them just a nice little video for the members of the press to watch, which should have been their first clue that they were about to get their little feelings hurt. But here's a little bit of what President Trump's little Supercut video looked like. Watch.
How worried should Americans be about coronavirus?
Coronavirus is not going to cause a major issue in the United States.
Well, we've asked them to accelerate whatever they're doing in terms of a vaccine.
We will be suspending all travel from Europe to the United States for the next 30 days.
To unleash the full power of the federal government in this effort today, I am officially declaring a national emergency. Medicare patients can now visit any doctor by phone or video conference at no additional cost.
The first 1 million masks will be available immediately.
Like a PowerPoint.
As there were more cases, and it was clear that it was spreading out of China, where it originated. The president took this move that he was widely criticized for by Democrats and even some Republicans at the time, which was he halted a number of flights from China into the U.S. At the end of the day, it was probably effective because it did actually take a pretty aggressive measure against the spread of the virus.
The production could be elevated a little, I gotta say.
His team is on it. They've been responsive late at night, early in the morning, and they've thus far been doing everything that they can do. And I want to say thank you, and I want to say that I appreciate it.
He returns calls. He reaches out. He's been proactive. We got that Mercy ship down here in Los Angeles. That was directly because he sent it down here.
So a couple different portions of that. There was, of course, the beginning, which we couldn't play all of it because we don't have time to play all of it. It's just President Trump showing all of the members of the mainstream media completely downplaying the virus, saying the flu was more to be worried about. I mean, everything that they're accusing him of doing, he showed them doing it themselves. Then he showed a timeline of what he did and all of the action that he took, followed by all of these governors praising him and saying he was responsive, he did take action, he has been working with us. Steve, I'll let you take first stab at this. What are your thoughts on the video that President Trump showed and the mainstream media reaction afterward?
Sarah, I thought the entire MO of yesterday's press conference was a masterpiece. Tactically, I thought it was strategically brilliant. Because if you look at where this battle is going to go next, the battle for this over this virus is going to end at the end of this month, I believe. Mm-hmm. In May, the battle is going to be about the process of opening up the country. The media is going to demand that we stay shut long enough for them to label him Herbert Hoover and blame him for the Great Depression they urged him to cause. And then you're going to have Democratic governors. Well, I don't know if we can open if it's safe. Translation, I'm trying to audition to either be Joe Biden's running mate or the future Democrat nominee. And then you're going to have big government types in both parties angling for more bailouts. Mm-hmm. And I think the president demonstrated yesterday he understands this. He fired a preemptive shot across the media's bow, attacking their integrity right away, blindsiding them with it in order to undermine their ability, their credibility to then try to undermine him for urging the country to reopen here soon. So we undermined them there. He then made Anthony Fauci essentially come hither. Mm-hmm. He starts the morning off by tweeting, fire Fauci. Then I just tweet stuff. And, Anthony Fauci was forced to confront, hey, if I really want to be William McClellan to his Abraham Lincoln, he's more shameless. Do I want to get trolled by Donald Trump? And the answer in the end for Anthony Fauci was, no, I don't. So I'll step to the podium and point out that he's the boss and not me. I thought yesterday was one of the best days that he's had in terms of game planning where the country needs to go in the future, and gave me confidence that he is at least aware and if not able to fight the battle that's going to come about reopening the country.
Still.
I think Steve's totally right on the where this direction is going. I think, that is where the debate goes from here. It's a very strange tactic, right, to play a 15-minute video, it seemed like, in the middle of a press conference. But if he didn't do it that way, it wouldn't have been covered, right? This is why people are seeing it. It was so out of the ordinary that this is why people are noticing it. I think my favorite part was in the middle, he plays that Maggie Haberman quote. Yeah. And Maggie Haberman goes back and forth between his favorite reporter and his least favorite reporter in the entire world. I listened to that. I played that on Stu Does America as well. And it is a great clip. And I actually thought it was really a notable moment in that it helps the mainstream media when they do things like that, when they admit the obvious, when they actually acknowledge that they were wrong about something, when hey, he was getting criticism, it was unfair, here's the truth. However, that clip, that 30-second clip, is sandwiched in about 40 minutes of nonstop criticism, which he pulled 30 seconds out of the middle from the source he was criticizing at the time, the New York Times. So he has a way of doing things that's quite interesting. The media does deserve this, and I think there is a time in which going back and really taking a microscope to every action Donald Trump took between mid-February and mid-March is going to be valuable. That time is not now, right? The time is not now. We need to figure out what we're going to do next, how we're going to get the country open. We need to make sure that we have all the things that we need to fight any outbreaks that might occur as we do try to open. We need to have a plan and get all these things ready. The time we have plenty of time before November to go back and forth and litigate whatever 2-week period they're obsessed with constantly. That's not what these briefings should be about. These briefings are supposed to be about what is going on now and what's going on in the future. And the press constantly wants to direct it back to the past, to a time, as the president clearly identified there, that they were making all of the same comments, all of the same mistakes. A medical expert after medical expert was trotted out and saying the same types of things. So, I think he handled it well. He did encapsulate. I do think 2 hours is too long. I got to be clear about that. But I think overall he handled it pretty well and highlighted the types of real hypocrisy that have been going on over the past couple of months.
Yeah. Steve, you mentioned Fauci, who, of course, has been under a great amount of criticism. I know there was some confusion about the comments that he made about his phrasing of pushback. And it was kind of a perfect example of what President Trump was trying to prove, the point that he was trying to prove whenever he played this clip of the mainstream media, constantly downplaying the virus and then trying to ask President Trump these gotcha questions. Paula Reed with CBS News, she went on with Anthony Fauci and she asked, she was engaging in a back and forth with him, trying to find out, his phrasing of the term pushback and why he was using that. And the question that she ends up asking him is just like mind-numbingly stupid. Gentlemen, want to get your thoughts on that. Here is what Paula Reed and Anthony Fauci exchanged yesterday.
You said there was pushback.
Yeah.
Where did that pushback come from?
No, it wasn't. And that was the wrong choice of words. You know what it was? When people discuss, not necessarily in front of the president, when people discuss, they say, well, this is going to have maybe a harmful effect on this or on that. So it was a poor choice of words. There wasn't anybody saying, no, you shouldn't do that.
Are you doing this voluntarily or did the president?
No, I'm doing it. Everything I do is voluntarily. Please, don't even imply that.
Are you doing this voluntarily, or do you have an invisible gun in front of your head right now? Blink twice if the answer is yes, Dr. Fauci. Steve, what in the hell was that?
I think that there's two competing forces here, and that at their worst, both the media and the president lack cosmic levels of self-awareness. But here's the difference. The president, while lacking self-awareness, can cut my taxes.
Yeah.
The president, while lacking self-awareness, can help me make sure I've got a job, feed my family, keep my borders secure, meaning he can still and seems willing to do affirmative things for me, even if and when at times he makes me roll my eyes, cover my eyes when I read his Twitter feed or put him on mute so that I don't, okay? All the media seems to do is just remind me of their lack of self-awareness while they lie to me, while they give me fake news, while they push their narrative, while they do their perpetual get out the vote effort, meaning that there's no trade-off here. I don't get anything out of that relationship with them, just all negatives. And I think that's why the president tends to win every time he clashes with them, because as many people don't like or don't trust him, next to them, he's Augustine.
Stu, I would tend to agree with that.
Yeah. I mean, it's you get nothing out of that, and that's the thing. I think the media is constantly trying to make it about them, what fights he's having with what media member, and that back and forth is there's an occasional part of me, and this comes from Trump too. I mean, I think Trump does this a lot too. He likes that battle. There's a part of me that every once in a while views a bit of a return to normalcy out of it. And there's like, every once in a while I might smile at that back and forth. But generally speaking, this is not a time to make this stuff about you. This is a time to make this about everyone else. We've got tens of millions of people who are unemployed. We've got tens of thousands of people who are dying. Like, these are really terrible, these are terrible things we're dealing with. And I don't think it helps the president to draw this sort of back and forth media thing. He's got to defend himself, and I think there is a line there. But to constantly be doing it all the time, I don't think it benefits him. But I get nothing out of it from the media side. Like, the media is supposed to be there to serve the viewers and the listeners, so they can understand these issues better. They don't get anything out of this. They don't get anything out of these back and forths about how mean the president is to them or not. We know who Donald Trump is. We know this is part of his MO. If I'm in that room and I want to actually get answers on things I think are important, the first thing I'm going to do is ignore that video and not ask one question about it. Obviously, Trump wants you to talk about that video. Obviously, he wants that to be the big deal. I would completely ignore it. Who cares? It's a video he put up there. People will watch it if they want to. Move on to something that you actually feel is important. They don't do that because they want to be on the stage. They all want to be. There's a little bit of Jim Acosta in all of them.
They do want to be the story, for sure. I mean, and I watched her. Go ahead, Steve.
Can I just add a quick thing to that?
Please.
Because I think Stu's making a fantastic point. Just to show you, just to further reinforce, Stu, what you just said. If they really wanted to trip him up, if they really were interested more so in, hey, we don't trust this guy, so let's expose him and get the real story, as opposed to, we have to expose him our way with our narrative and fit this square peg into this round hole no matter what. Here's what they would do. Instead of just bringing the same political reporters up there every single day to ask the same questions, they'd go get their medical experts who hate Trump just as much, but would start asking questions about herd immunity and why we're ignoring competing studies at Stanford, Oxford, podunk JUCOs like Carnegie Mellon. How are you sure that what you guys are doing is correct? They would actually go get like liberally biased or left-wing biased medical experts, but who were also subject matter experts, and really put them on the defensive with their questioning. Instead, they send the same hacked activists up there every single day to ask the same questions and engage in the same sophomoric tactics all the time. And that just goes to show you they're just not serious.
Yeah, I mean, amen to that. Coming up next, a study was done. What do Americans fear more, coronavirus or the collapsing economy? You'll never guess. We'll get into that next. First, we want to thank our sponsor, Freedom Project Education. Normally, when we talk about Freedom Project Academy, it's because parents want to protect their children from left-wing propaganda and indoctrination. But now we're all faced with this same problem of school districts that are closing down because of coronavirus, and we're all stuck at home with our kids. We're like, I did not sign up for this homeschooling business, and it's not for me. If you are that person, well, you have a new reason to consider an accredited online education from Freedom Project Academy. Now, you can do this from the comfort and safety of your home, but it's not you. Your children are receiving an accredited classical online education built on Judeo-Christian values. It's for students K through 12. It's completely interactive, educational, and they attend live classes with students across the country. And here's the big thing here that you need to take away from this. They are teaching your students, your children, how to think, not what to think, which is completely the opposite of all of these school districts across America. Now is the time. If you are like, this homeschool thing is not for me, I'm about to jump off a bridge. Don't do that. Instead, go to freedomforschool.com. That is freedomforschool.com. Request your free information packet today. By the way, enrollment had just started whenever coronavirus hit. Classes started filling up way more quickly than normal because obviously parents are concerned for the safety of their children. You got to go there as soon as possible. You go to freedomforschool.com. Get that informational packet today, freedomforschool.com. All right, FiveThirtyEight just recently did a poll, a study on what Americans fear more at this point in time, coronavirus, getting sick from it, or the collapsing economy. Now, I want to talk about this along with what's going on in Raleigh, North Carolina right now. Steve, I know I saw you tweet about it, so I know that you have been watching it as well. I looked at what was going on before we came here to the table for the show and was stunned at what is going on in Raleigh. So I want to get to that because I think it is an important point to bring into this. But FiveThirtyEight said that 38.8% of Americans are, quote, very worried that they or someone in their family will get the coronavirus, become infected with it. And another 36.3% say they are somewhat worried that they or someone in their family will become infected. Compared to, if you look at who is worried about the economy and the downfall of the economy, 86.9% say they are, quote, very worried about the economy or somewhat worried about the economy. And a total of just 12% say that they are not very worried or not at all worried. I think those people are just completely not paying attention to what is going on around them. So congratulations for being an ostrich with your head stuck in the sand. But Steve, I know that you have been on this. You have been what I consider reasonably skeptical of the information that we're using, the models that we're using, the backup that we perhaps don't have to cite when you're talking about shutting down economies. You're talking about shutting down a global economy. Does this surprise you at all? I feel like the obvious answer is no, but there are a lot of Americans now who are they're tired of sitting on their couches and they're not concerned about coronavirus anymore. They're concerned about their paychecks. What do you think?
I'm not surprised. I am surprised 538 told us this.
Yeah.
But I am at least this early in the debate. But I am not surprised at those numbers. And I think a couple of things to consider is there's been almost no media focus on those larger socioeconomic questions compared to panic porn that we're peddling. So I think that's something to keep in mind when you look at those numbers, which then brings up point number 2 here. It just goes to show really how outside of one particular group of people in America, and they apparently are all the people that voted on Super Tuesday a month ago. All right. So outside of all the people that voted for Joe Biden on Super Tuesday under the marching orders given to them by the Democratic Party and the media working not coincidentally in concert, outside of those people, the rest of America, they simply just don't have much they don't resonate with them, much credibility with them. They don't speak for them. They're in their own bubble. Not to mention 88% of America lives outside of Detroit, outside of New York City, outside of Chicago, outside of LA, Seattle, which are really unless you live in those communities, the only thing you know about this virus right now in the rest of America is that it's likely costing you or somebody you know your job and your ability to leave your house. That's all you know about it unless you live in one of those other 5 or 6 cities. And one of the things I said all along to my audience, Sara, is this debate was going to pivot on this question. It's not so much what's going on at hospitals in New York, LA, Seattle. Those places are never voting for Donald Trump anyway. It's what's going to go on in hospitals in Birmingham, Alabama, Wichita, Kansas, Des Moines, Iowa, Greenville, South Carolina. All right, these are top 100 markets in America where there are a lot of people that vote for Donald Trump there. If they're seeing their hospitals overrun, then they're going to have one particular view of this issue. And if they're not, they're going to have the other. And they're not, so they have the other.
Yeah. Steve brings up a great point, especially about the hospitals. I was actually just at my local hospital for my pregnancy checkup, and it completely empty. I mean, deserted. Now, that didn't stop them from almost not letting my child in with me, which where else is he going to go because I can't take him to school? But we had to do the masks. We had to do the hand sanitizer. I'm happy to go with the flow on that. But it was completely empty. No one was there. It's hard when you're seeing all of this economic devastation and you walk into the hospitals and you're like, for what? What are we doing all of this for?
Yeah, I keep telling my kids, don't get hurt now because I'm not bringing you to the hospital. Screw it. I don't want to go anywhere near the place. There's a situation here where there's been interesting conversation about, and speculation and people disagreeing with each other on the side of how bad COVID's going to be. There hasn't been much difference, I don't think, when it comes to how bad the economy's going to be. The economy's going to suck. And that's why this has to be a short-term situation. Look, we can't do this for very long. This is not, the economy is not built to just shut down. It's not a thing. Look, if let's say it was the worst thing in the world, and we had, it was 10 times worse than it is. It still is there's a limited amount of time you can do this. If we bought ourselves a little bit of time to build up the supplies needed and get everything, learn a little bit more and see how these other countries have progressed, and maybe we can learn something about how to fight this off in the places where, there are outbreaks or whatever, if it comes up later. That's valuable. I don't, it's a very expensive price tag on that, which it's hard to deal with. And I think you're right in that. We've seen, New York is really bad. Detroit's really bad. It looks like New Orleans is going to be pretty bad. There are big cities, especially with high population density areas, that have been hit really hard by this. But most people, as Steve points out, aren't in those areas. Yeah. So it's hard to. They have empathy for people who are going through this, and it's brutal. A lot of these stories are brutal. They are out there, and it's tough. But the media tries to keep framing this as, if you care about the economy opening up at any point, you just want to kill old people. Right. And it's like, aren't we adults here? Like, we all recognize at some point.
No,
apparently not.
No, we're not.
Apparently not. We have to do this at some point. This conversation has to happen. We all understand there are trade-offs with every economic policy. So let's be adults. Let's step to the table, try to understand the best way to do this that limits, the destruction as far as human life goes, obviously, but also allows the civilization to continue. Because if it doesn't, there are no medical cures for the next coronavirus thing that breaks out, not to mention every other disease we're already dealing with.
Yeah. Steve, I have just a hunch that you may have something that you may want to add to that.
Yes. First of all, I didn't know that you were pregnant, so congratulations.
Thank you.
Wow.
Thank you.
That's very cool.
Thank you. It's an interesting experience during a pandemic, I'll tell you that.
I'm also pregnant, I should point out.
Well, one of the stories that came out today is the Mayo Clinic is cutting back staff and doing layoffs. So if we're literally saying that the Mayo Clinic, folks, is non-essential, just stop and take a deep breath and understand we're saying the Mayo Clinic is non-essential. What in the Sam Hill are we doing here? It doesn't make any sense. They've set up these field hospitals all over the country. Several of them they've already closed in Knoxville, Denver. The one in Seattle, one of the original hot zones for this, didn't see a single patient. They built it and tore it down in the span of the same week. I mean, this is just, and why are we not surprised that the people who gave us the DMV and Obamacare may not be totally prepared to run the entire country? All right. So what we need to do is ultimately, if you want all this infrastructure, as Stu said, now we've got more ventilators than we know what to do with suddenly, so we're giving them to other countries, but we don't have ventilator trees, and in Michigan, you can't plant those anyway. We don't have surgical mask, plants. These things have to be manufactured by the multi-millions, and guess who's got to go and do that? A lot of the people currently sitting on their couches. At some point, we have to get on with real life, and I'll just throw this in here too. 100 years ago, during the Spanish flu, because I'm a big sports guy, as you guys know, I went and looked at how the sports world was impacted. Because we're talking about canceling a football season 5 months away and everything else. Folks, every World Series game between the Red Sox and the Cubs in 1918, and the Red Sox had a promising young pitcher named Babe Ruth on that team. Every one of those 7 games sold out, even though players on teams were dying of Spanish flu. Wow. Fans were dying of Spanish flu. Life still went on. We still industrialized the nation. We won 2 world wars. You can't just shut life down. We didn't do it for Spanish flu and polio. And I don't care if you have the most apocalyptic notion of the data. This isn't going to come close to a Spanish flu or a polio. And yet, look what those generations still understood, that mortality meant that life had to be lived all the more. Not that you hid out and you lived in fear, but that because it was finite, you've got a limited amount of time to maximize your God-given potential and make a mark, here on this earth. Don't just sit on your couch. Our reaction to this has been all wrong.
Yeah, I could not agree more there. And I want to talk about, when we come back from the break, I want to get into, again, what's going on in Raleigh and how that kind of plays into. Americans are done. They're done sitting on their couches. They're worried about the economy. They want to get back to work. First, we want to thank our sponsor, Omega XL. I just recently had a phone call with Dr. McQuillan, who works over at Omega XL. This is a natural supplement designed to reduce joint pain and inflammation. As a lot of you know, if you are health conscious like myself, inflammation is the root cause for a lot of different ailments that you have. Maybe you wake up in the morning and you're like, oh my gosh, I can't move my back. Well, what did you do? I don't know. I slept. And now I'm in pain. So left untreated, inflammation can cause permanent damage. You may be trying, pain relievers, topical creams. They don't really treat the problem. They just mask it. Omega XL goes right to the inflammation. It's backed by 30 years of research. It is a powerful natural supplement. It helps reduce pain due to inflammation while it promotes healthy joints and increased mobility. There is nothing like it in the world. Right now, staying healthy is on everyone's mind. So here's another reason to take Omega XL. Research actually shows that it can promote a healthy immune response. You got to have a good immune system right now. I don't feel like I even need to tell you that. The obviousness of that is clear. Here's a special offer to get you started. Order now. Get your second bottle for free. Go to omegaxl.com/news. That is omegaxl.com/news. I want to talk about what's going on in Raleigh, North Carolina. So there was a Reopen North Carolina protest there. Raleigh police, don't worry everyone, they were on the case. They tweeted out this series of tweets that they are now under harsh criticism for. We are aware of the Reopen North Carolina protest that is occurring in downtown Raleigh. We're monitoring the situation. They later came out and said, don't worry, we've shut it down. And there was at least one arrest made that we know. Now, there were particular people who were like, so what is the violation here? What are they doing wrong? to which the police responded, well, this is section 1 and 3 of the executive order from the governor that they violated. And also, by the way, protesting is a non-essential activity. We'll have none of that here, okay? Steve, I feel like there are a couple issues with like this really, really old document that was written a long time ago that is there to protect rights like these.
Yeah, and does it say anything about speech, assembly,
know.
anything?
Yeah. I mean, I seem to recall that. It sounds a little familiar.
And this phrase, we hold these truths to be, that's the next line. It'll come to me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, something or something. You know what? Somebody asked Joe Biden. I'm sure he remembers.
The thing.
Yeah, the thing, indeed. What you're seeing here, this is the second time North Carolina has had this, by the way. They had a situation where David Benham got arrested for doing a Planned Parenthood protest on a sidewalk while being, socially distanced. You had Greenville, Mississippi, where police, without wearing masks, were going around handing out tickets for people going to a drive-through church service. You had Louisville, Kentucky, where, they were put nails down in parking lots and said they were going to forcibly quarantine you if you showed up to church. And I think there's 2 points that our audience needs to be aware of with this. Number one, look at the places I just mentioned: Kentucky, Mississippi, North Carolina, heart of the Bible Belt, deep red states. If this can go on, and this is not just, the People's Republic of California, folks. If this can go on in Greenville, Mississippi, there's no suburb, exurb, red state where you live, okay? No Bible Belt state where you live where this could not happen to you. That's number one, to keep that in mind. And then number two, always remember that tyrants need local bureaucracy to carry out their edicts. The Supreme Court can come up with any wickedness from the pagan bowels of their depraved minds they want. It's going to take somebody on a local level to carry it out and say, I think it's a great idea. Let's go ahead and let you shoot everybody named Sara Gonzales because the Supreme Court voted 5-4 it was okay. Some governor, mayor is going to have to say, some police apparatus is going to have to carry that out. And the same thing is true here. The governor of Kentucky, the new Democrat governor there, can be the God hater all the God hater he wants to be, but it was going to require some local law enforcement to say, you know what, we're just following orders. And it appears that phrase, which has had some tragic moments in history in other eras and in other countries, has tragically made its way to our country in this era.
Steve is not wrong there. It's certainly something I've continued to say on the show is, you guys are begging for this. Are you really going to want it when it comes to your doorstep? And you've got this overreach of government. It's certainly not going to go away once the coronavirus does, Stu.
Yeah, and first of all, I want to say I'm on the fence on the Sara Gonzales edict. I don't know. I could go either way at this point. I'll have to see how the rest of the show goes. I think there's a situation here where, let's just take it from their perspective for a second. Let's take all the best ideas. The best assumptions of what they're trying to do. They really believe this is really dangerous. They really believe you can't do this. They really need you to cooperate for this short amount of time until we can get this thing turned on. We'll just accept that for a second. The worst thing you can do is enforce nonsensical regulations that piss everybody off. Right? Like, this is just going to make people want to push back. It's going to make people angry. You're not letting me go to church on Easter? We're trying here. Generally speaking, the American people have said, look, this is making us really uncomfortable. We're all losing our jobs. But I mean, okay, we'll try this for a while because, we really want to make sure people live. Like, that's a great instinct out of people as part of this, in that, like, the intent there is really good. And people generally have followed it. You do this from the government level and say, you know what, you can't go out, you can't play catch with your kid in a park. Like, this is just asinine, right? And you're just going to, if you want people to go along willingly and do these things, you're just making that much more difficult for them to accept. And in the end, it's going to wind up hurting whatever effort they're trying to do here anyway. Not to mention, it's entirely unconstitutional in about 1,000 different ways, which is a minor thing. It was this document I think you guys were mentioning.
Yeah, it's
earlier.
really old though.
Yeah, really, it's dusty. It's
yeah,
dusty. I don't think we should listen anymore.
I've heard it's a living, breathing document though, so we just make these modifications because Steve, obviously, it says in there. I think that it's a little asterisk, and it says, Unless there is an upper respiratory virus, and then all of this can just be thrown off to the side. Have you seen the asterisk?
I have. I think it's right there next to the separation of church and state, actually. Yes. But if look at the language they're using. I mean, you see these clips, your rights are suspended. You noted in the tweet, this is not, protesting is non-essential. One of my favorites is the guy on the train in Philly not wearing a mask, yelling about a guy not wearing a mask, as the police, several of them not wearing a mask, violently drag him off of the train, okay? I mean, here's the thing. At some point, this virus is going to come and go. But the precedent of the tyranny that we said, that the petty, gross tyranny that we said we would tolerate in order to fight it, the precedents we have set, those will remain. And a lot of things have been revealed. You're getting an idea right now that a major political party in America, even when it rarely wins gubernatorial races in southern red states, it really isn't so much concerned about the spread of the virus as much as it's concerned about the spread of the gospel and the message preached at those churches. And you're seeing that where the bake the cake bigot instinct, where when we dial this, ours goes up to 11. When we spinal tap bake the cake bigot, it comes down to, you know what, let's just put nails in your parking lot so we flatten all of your tires. A lot of things are being revealed this month, and as a former president's erstwhile pastor once said, a lot of chickens right now are coming home to roost.
Could not have put it better myself. Coming up next, Joe Biden. He finally gets that coveted endorsement. Doesn't even matter, though, at this point. Is it even worth it? We'll get into that when we come back. Over a week now, it's been since Joe Biden clinched the nomination. We assume, right, barring something crazy going on at the convention. Bernie Sanders dropped out, and it's been crickets from Barack Obama this whole time, former President Barack Obama. Finally, Barack Obama came out today endorsing Joe Biden. He said he's so proud to endorse Joe Biden for president. Choosing Joe to be his vice president was one of the best decisions he ever made, and he became a close friend. Joe has all the qualities we need in a president right now, which is interesting because he didn't endorse him before, and he had already picked him to be his vice president like a long time ago. But now that we're sure that he's the last man standing, Stu, he is really proud to endorse Joe Biden.
Yeah, you know, we have a system here where we basically award the presidential nominee a one-man election in which they are able to choose whoever they want in the entire country who is the most qualified person that should lead the country. God forbid something happens to the president of the United States or they step down for whatever reason. He chose Joe Biden in that moment, right? Mm-hmm. The fact that he waited until after everyone else in the Democratic Party has now, left the race, shows, I think, either he really did not pick him because he thought he was the best candidate or the best person to run the country, or he saw something behind the scenes that we didn't see and maybe do see a little bit too often in his public appearances, where he's just not capable of doing the job. And he was hoping the American people and the Democratic Party would pick somebody else so he didn't have to go through with this. I don't know. I mean, there's some rumors and reporting that he was helping behind the scenes. I tend to think that that's coming from the Obama camp. It seems to happen every single time Joe Biden wins at something. All of a sudden, we find out that Barack Obama was mysteriously behind it the whole time. I don't know that I believe that reporting. It seems to me that, look, it was a disingenuous pick as vice president if he didn't come out and endorse the guy on day one. He didn't do that. It would have helped tremendously to Biden then. It means nothing now.
Yeah.
And honestly, Joe Biden specifically asked him not to do it,
right.
If you believe Joe Biden. So I think it's a jerk move. I mean, the guy's not a friend at all.
Steve, what do you think? Jerk move?
I think you can accuse Barack Obama of a lot of things, but a lack of self-awareness is not one of them. He understands how to command a room. He understands how to control a political situation, turn it to his advantage. He's a very gifted politician. That's why we struggled to beat him for 8 years. And so I'm big in giving respect to your enemy when he or she has earned it, or your opponent. And so when you look at the chain of events here, so essentially when he got done watching NBA Horse, And after Bernie Sanders got done lighting fire to his own revolution, to which he's now getting hung in effigy on social media, after all of this, after all of these contests, after all these delays, and in the middle of a pandemic, finally Barack Obama was like, "I'll bleep, whatever, dude. All right, let's get this over with." All right. I mean, the only thing that would have made this better is if he had done this at like 5:49 Eastern time on a Friday. All right. I mean, and then forgot to delete Friday news dump from the email subject line. I mean, this is, he might as well have said, "Joe, let's just be friends." I mean, this is one of the most passive aggressive. Listen, I remember being on the Cruz campaign when we needed Mike Pence's endorsement in Indiana, and he went on the radio and talked for a half an hour about how great Donald Trump was, and then said, "And that's why I'm endorsing Ted Cruz for president." I know what terrible milquetoast endorsements look like, okay? And it looks a lot like this. That's what it looks like.
Steve, you just totally told on yourself. You were watching the horse competitions that have been televised, haven't you?
I didn't. Okay. You know what? I will watch some NBA Finals game from 35 years ago long before I watch a bunch of dudes play horse in their driveway. Well, I'm not that desperate yet, but I may be able to get there if this goes on much longer.
I mean, legitimate, true story. I walked into my living room the other night. I guess it was last night before last. And my husband has this on, and it's like a split screen of two people in there. Like you said, it's two people in their driveways playing horse. And I'm like, what are you watching? Turn it. There has to be some rerun on that's better than this crap.
Oh, we're so desperate for sports right now. I mean, this is like the time you'd want them. I would distract myself with sports out of talking about COVID-19 as much as humanly possible if it was available. This is why the NFL draft is saving me a little bit. At least I can sit here and obsess about who's going to get picked. Yeah. That's the only thing I actually care about at this. Well, you got the pandemic and you got the NFL draft. That's about where I am right now, and I'm really leaning draft at this point.
All right, we'll be back in a minute.
Oh, that's tough. It's tough to do this about sports. This really is the time we need it most.
Now,
oh, it's brutal.
That is really interesting. All right, yesterday's poll question: how do you feel about Dr. Fauci's performance during this pandemic? Let's see, 57% of you said, "I'm concerned." 13% said, "I trust him." Apparently, 30% of you didn't really care enough to pick one, similar to Stu yesterday, and just wanted the results. Could you please stop giving them? Don't give them a "just show me the results" option. That's a total cop-out. I want to know if you're concerned. Do you trust him? Today's poll: how do you feel about Trump's fiery response to reporters at yesterday's press briefing? All right, gentlemen, I got to get your answers on this. So, how do you feel about Trump's fiery response to reporters at yesterday's press briefing? I loved it, I hated it, or mixed reaction. Steve, I think we know you. You called it a masterpiece, right? So you loved it.
Yeah, I don't think you can do that every day, but in that moment, it absolutely was a masterpiece. So I loved it.
Okay, Stu.
I would say just show me the results.
No, that's not an option here.
No, I would say I probably would lead to the actual mixed reaction. Like I think Steve's right. It was a good performance. He pulled that off well, but I am a little tired of that back and forth. I think as Steve points out, like I could deal with it once in a while, right? Like and he did do a good job of it yesterday. But generally speaking, at these things, what I want is a short update on what the hell is going on, and then leave me alone for the rest of the day. That's what I want. And this winds up being such a big show and spectacle, largely because that's what the media wants it to be. But I could really pass on it. I don't need any more of it. I've had my fill.
Yeah. All right. Let us know what you think. You can go to the Blaze's Twitter. That is @The Blaze. Gentlemen, thank you for being here. Especially Steve. Thank you for taking the time all the way. How many feet? 6,000?
We're at least 6,000 feet. At least 6,000.
Well,
yes.
you never can be too careful. Don't forget, you can find Steve Deace on BlazeTV, The Steve Deace Show, along with Stu Burgier. Stu Does America. We'll see you guys tomorrow.